Robert F. Kennedy Jr. joins me now in South Carolina. Thank you for coming to the Palmetto State.
I'm very happy to be here.
Tell me why you've been critical of this state going first in the primary. South Carolina, as we know, is first in the Democratic primary. Why are you critical of that?
Well, I'm not critical of South Carolina going first, but I'm critical of the DNC's project, which is to get rid of Iowa and New Hampshire. New Hampshire for 100 years has been number one in the Democratic Party, but President Biden didn't do well there. So the states that where he didn't do well, the voters of those states are now being disenfranchised. So the votes that, for example, if I get votes in that state, they won't count. The people of South Carolina, the Democratic Party of South Carolina has no capacity to change the date. It's in their constitution. They can't change it. So ordering them to change it and then saying we're going to disenfranchise you if you don't, that is not very democratic. And I think on principle, it's not a good way to run a primary to just take the primary states where you did well last time and only allow those people to vote. I don't think that is a really good exemplar for democracy.
I want to talk to you about your race for the White House because what you're trying to do here is very unprecedented, right? President Biden's the sitting president and he is seeking re-election for his party. He's trying to be the nominee. He's all but certainly going to get it. How do you plan to become the nominee when you're up against Biden, who's running for re-election?
Well, my favorability ratings are better now than President Biden's. They're better than President Trump's. They're better than any other candidates. Despite the barrage of negative press that I've gotten, my favorability ratings are still better than any other candidate. And 70% of Democrats have said that they don't want President Biden to run. Oh, I think although the DNC is doing everything in its power to make sure that there is no competition, I think if we have a straight out primary that I will win.
And lastly, you have spoken out a lot about big pharmaceutical companies and so forth. What's your plan in terms of making America better for the everyday American? I know you touched on it a little bit out there, but what are just some of your policies if you want to just hit a few bullet points here?
Well, the big issue that right now I think many people are concerned with is housing. Our children, the next generation, for my generation, the promise was that if you worked hard, if you played by the rules, that you could afford to own your own house, that you'd have money for summer vacation, that you could put aside money for your retirement today, and that's with just one job. Today, that's out of reach. People in your generation, I know very few kids in your generation who can afford a home. And housing in this country has gone up from $215,000 for the average house 2 years ago to $400,000 today, and the interest rates have more than doubled. So kids, who are my kids' age, I have 7 kids between 20 and 39 years old, and for most of those kids and for their friends, getting a house now is out of reach, and that is the basis of having a middle class in this country. The reason we developed this giant middle class is because we were able to initiate a housing boom after World War II with the GI Bill. But today, 3 giant companies are trying to buy up all the single-family homes in our country. So by 2030, 60% of single-family homes will be owned by those companies. And our kids, they have deep bank books. They pay very little on interest, and our kids can't compete with them. And, that's wrong, and I'm going to change it.
One last question here. How are you going to get the vote of the far left? Just at this event today, a Trump supporter came up to you. You're attracting a lot of conservative people, so how are you going to get the far left vote?
My politics are the exact same as my father's. So if you go down the traditional concerns of liberal Democrats, I check every one of those boxes. I'm skeptical of the military-industrial complex. I don't think we should jump into every war that comes along. I like free speech in this country. I like the Constitution. I'm against censorship. I'm pro-environment. I've been the leading environmental attorney in this country for the past 40 years. And I have a long history of an advocate for all of those issues that Democrats have traditionally been concerned with.
All right, best of luck with the campaign. Thanks for stopping in South Carolina.
Thank you so much for having me.